Matinee prices. Welcome to Matinee prices.
Oh, God.
Baxter says hello.
That's Baxter welcoming you to Matinee prices in his own unique way. Baxter. That's enough. Joining us today is Cinnamon, and we are. Should we start over?
What?
Should we start over?
and be professional? No.
All right.
Look.
So,
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, why would
All right.
we do that? It's matinee prices.
All right.
You know Cam. Hey, you know I'm Donald Trump. I'm the new president. You're welcome. And we have our friend here, Cinnamon.
Finally, matinee prices is great again.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it great. Well, actually, Cinnamon will make it great.
That's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
yeah.
So it
So
wasn't great before.
today's episode is we're discussing the works of Mr. Paul Verhoeven, a very interesting director. Paul Verhoeven got his start making Dutch films in the 70s. Actually, he got his start making films for the Navy. He was in the Navy and he made documentaries and TV specials for the Navy.
For the Navy?
Yeah,
Our Navy or their Navy?
their Navy.
Ah. Well,
And then he directed a television series called Flores about medieval knights, where he discovered a young actor named Rutger Hauer, who went on to star in most of his early films. In 1973, one of his first feature-length films, Turkish Delight, was nominated for Best Foreign Films at the Oscars. He came to America in 1985, directed Flesh and Blood, did an episode of The Hitchhiker called The Last Scene, and from then on he went on to direct movies like RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers, Showgirls, Black Book, and Elle. He is well into his 80s, and right now he's still working. He's got 2 movies in pre-production, and
2 movies?
he just, in this past year, he made the movie Elle, which is probably his best reviewed movie ever, which proves that he's just getting better with age. Elle was nominated for over 70 international awards.
Oh, yeah.
Isabelle Huppert was nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars. It basically swept the César Awards, which is the French Oscars. And so, like I said, this guy, you know, he's older than Scorsese and Spielberg, and he's still going strong. Like, he's kind of doing the best work of his career, basically.
She got an Oscar nomination?
Yeah, this year.
Sweet.
And she earned it. I watched that movie today, and it is incredible. Hard to watch, really intense, thought-provoking. It's a revenge film. A woman is assaulted, and then she orchestrates an elaborate plan to get back at the man who assaulted her.
Yeah.
And it's very good. I highly recommend it. But we are going to discuss... first, I want to talk about Flesh and Blood, just briefly before we move into some of his other stuff. Flesh and Blood was his first English language film, 1985. It is a brutally violent movie set during the Dark Ages. It stars Rutger Hauer, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Susan Terrell, Ronald Lacey, who was Arnold Tote in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
He's the Nazi guy.
Yep.
And his performance in Flesh and Blood is insane. It's like so over the top. His performance in Flesh and Blood makes Al Pacino's performance in Scent of a Woman look subdued and restrained. He turns it up to 11. It also features the great Brian James, who we're going to talk about later, Bruno Kirby, and Nancy Cartwright, famous cartoon voice actress from Kim Possible, Bobby's World, and she's the voice of Bart Simpson, and she has a small part in Flesh and Blood. It's a great movie. It's violent. It's gritty. It's if you like movies set during that time period, they're set during the Black Plagues, and they don't hold anything back. It's brutally realistic, and it's very good. Underrated movie. It flopped at the box office, but it caught on later on home video. Played on HBO a lot. They did it on the Z channel, and that documentary,
Yep.
Channel Z.
Yep.
It got heavy rotation on Channel Z apparently, and that's one of the reasons that people found out about it. So Flesh and Blood, 1985, directed by Paul Verhoeven. I highly recommend it.
Now, do you pronounce it Paul Verhoeven or Paul Verhoeven?
I say Verhoeven.
No, you didn't. No, you don't say that right. You got to do it with the accent.
Verhoeven.
There you go.
Right.
That's how you do it.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great thing about Paul Verhoeven, before we continue, he has directed films in 4 different languages: English, French, Dutch, and German. And
Dutch is a language?
Danish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thought you meant like the shoe.
Yeah. And so I just think that's really impressive.
Yeah, no, it
You
is
know,
really impressive.
Most
yeah.
people have trouble with one language. He's directed films in 4 different languages.
with English.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there we go. So that's Flesh and Blood, and now Cinnamon. Why don't you?
Let's just dump it all in that. Well, here's the thing. So,
Let's make a segue by saying that a lot of his movies
Yeah.
were not immediately successful or panned by critics, and Showgirls is probably the biggest
pan.
flop
Yeah.
of his career,
Yeah.
possibly.
If you haven't heard of Showgirls, it's how would you describe Showgirls?
It's the movie where Jesse Spano gets naked.
I mean, that's
Which is
how.
probably why it made it to cult status, but not why anyone should watch it, even
Right.
though she is a great dancer and she looks amazing. Elizabeth Berkley really wanted that part, and I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
if it was necessarily because it was a breakaway from Jesse Spano from Saved by the Bell, for those of you
Yeah.
who are not old enough to remember that show.
Because it had only been off the air for like 2 years when Showgirls
Yeah.
came out, so it was like recent.
Yeah, Verhoeven apparently did not know that, had not seen the show and didn't really know
That she was kind of a.
that she was sort of, you know, it was like that weird countdown for when people turn 18 and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Like that's like a creepy
It's
thing.
sort of-
But so that was not necessarily intentional on his part, but later he was like, it was probably brilliant because so many Americans knew who she was.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like notoriously hated by feminists, and I think that
Yeah.
I don't see how.
I think it was notoriously hated by everybody.
Yeah.
well, I mean, and it's bad, but it's like it's bad on purpose, you know. And so I actually love it because I think that I like bad movies. Like,
Right.
let's put that out there.
Okay.
And like I enjoy like schlocky B movie bullshit. Like I love it.
Did you
Same here.
love it as a bad movie from the start, or did you gain bad movie respect for it as the years
How
passed?
did you feel about it? Like when you saw it for the first
When
time?
I saw it for the first time, I was like 20 years old
Yeah.
when it came out, and I was so taken aback by the amount of nudity in it that I was kind of scandalized. And I wouldn't say that I'm very prudish, but like 22 years later, like I can totally deal with nudity and not be like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how I felt about everything. Like I had never like seen pornography, and it was like shocking to me. And it's not pornographic. It's not even supposed to be sexy. You know, like I think that it's supposed to show that, and the artist's intent actually, you know, when you walk into a movie theater means nothing because you're bringing all of your own baggage.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so but
Huh.
I think that it's supposed to show like how unsexy that sort of performance is. Like, you know, stripping is an exchange for money.
Right.
It's not sexy. I don't understand why guys go to strip clubs and think it's sexy, other than, you know, like watching pretty naked women.
Right.
Like everybody can agree that that's like delightful.
Right, but
But-
the sort of opinion that it is sexy as built up and sort of illusionary as it is,
Right.
that idea sort of sailed.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, this is
and
sexy.
so it's sort of like, let's show how awkward and not sexy this actually is.
Now,
and
do
I
you-
think that
do you
that
think
is
that that's
something.
what came across?
I don't know if that's what came across because, again, intent means nothing.
Exactly.
And most people that saw it, that liked it, were just like, fuck yeah, naked girls.
Yeah.
You know, and lots and lots and
And
lots of
lots
naked
of naked
girls.
girls,
But
yeah.
there's an equal number of like naked dudes too, you know,
True.
like not fully frontal naked, but lots of dude butts.
So
So
when I had not heard of a sort of pro-feminist take on Showgirls. I didn't think
Okay.
there would be or could be one
Yeah. So
until
until
Cinnamon. So
her character she's a strong character. She's really focused on her career.
right.
And I guess you could say that she's sort of mildly devious. She's willing to use her sexuality to get anything that she
Okay.
wants, and she's willing to go to the very ends to get what she wants.
Right.
But if you look at it in terms of the character interactions, she immediately makes friends with a woman with whom she does not have a romantic entanglement.
Mm.
They're friends. They have lots of conversations about things other than men,
Yeah.
which is a big thing in a
True.
lot of movies. Gina Gershon's character is the sort of like nemesis character,
Mhm.
Right.
and they do horrible, deplorable things to one another in the movie, and really like kind of catfight
Catfight,
bitch
yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of stuff. But
Yeah.
but by the end of the movie, they have an understanding.
Yeah.
Like she goes to see her in the hospital, and she's kind of like, I would have done the same fucking thing. I get it.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. If you look at that in terms of the female relationships in the movie, they're all very positive. In fact, Berkeley's character like fucks up a guy because he hurts her friend.
Right.
And even
Yeah, and that scene's awesome.
yeah.
It reminded me of the Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, where
Yeah.
she beats that dude while she's wearing those thigh boots.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said. Actually, this is probably a whole nother show and a different conversation about exploitation films. Strong women, strong female characters, where like they probably got funded and got money because it was like, we can show women in prison making out, and everyone was like, yes.
Yeah.
And so there's that like, we can get this made,
Yeah.
but every like the female characters, what they're actually saying
Right.
is very
You sneak in the message.
It's
It's
like,
like,
Right.
like sugarcoating.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the Pam Grier movies from the 70s.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
all,
Any of those
there was always a
quotations.
lot of there was always a lot of
Yeah.
nudity and sex in those, but at the same time they were all about like strong independent women like kicking ass and like not taking any shit from men.
Yeah.
Was like the through line of all those movies.
precisely. And if you look at like other movies, I can't remember when Working Girl came out, but
88.
it's so 7 years previous to this. It's like a high profile movie, big stars. The story is essentially the same.
Mhm.
Huh.
They're or at the very basic levels.
Yeah,
Like,
small
there's-
town girl comes to the big city.
comes to the big city. She's like working really hard to make her dreams of becoming a professional, and her career goals are like very like it's more important than her boyfriend. It's more important than a lot of things, and she
That's true.
is
yeah.
willing
true.
to do anything. In fact, she impersonates her boss. She does a bunch of illegal shit, and she gets away with all of it. And the Sigourney Weaver character in that movie is just a bitch. Like, she's very one-dimensional.
She's the Gina Gershon character.
Right, and
And Kyle
they
MacLachlan
never
is Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and so they never actually they never actually come to an understanding. They just hate each other the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, like, the big reward is that she ends up with the male character, which is just totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Here's your prize.
Here's your prize. Like, you get this job, awesome, but more importantly, you get the guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a romantic comedy, and I actually really love that movie too. And Alec Baldwin's fucking awesome. But
always awesome.
Yeah.
But if like their working relationship is basically the same. They do a bunch of horrible stuff. Like Catherine's character steals her ideas, and so it's just in a different format. But essentially it's the same interplay socially in the story. They're competitive about a man. So she goes after Kyle MacLachlan. Mostly because she knows that he'll unsettle Gina Gershon, and she doesn't really care about him that much, but she uses him and he uses her right back.
Right.
But, the idea there is essentially the same, and it's that, women being competitive with each other and not cooperating and never like coming to an understanding. But there's much more cooperation amongst the female characters in Showgirls than there is in that movie.
Yeah.
And
That dynamic, which is common, like immediately I was thinking of like a lot of Rocky, their enemies or adversaries, and then later on, like, they earn respect. But I mean, like, that's just one example.
I was actually thinking, like,
and I didn't even think that these sort of movies would even have that for female characters.
Well, a few minutes ago, I was thinking of Rocky 2 for a different reason, because you were like, she's using the skills that she has to make money, stripping. Like, she maybe not necessarily likes to do it, but there's a scene in Rocky where Adrian asks him, it's like, why do you like fighting? And he's like, I don't like fighting. You'd have to be stupid to like fighting. It's brutal, but it's like, but then he's like, but I can't sing and dance. Hey, it's like he's using he's limited in what he has, but he's good at beating people up. So he becomes a boxer to make money.
Yeah.
And because that's his only choice.
Yeah.
So it's you could draw a lot of comparisons from Showgirls to a lot of different movies. See, I feel like with Showgirls, it's like you can tell that it's directed by Paul Verhoeven, but it's very obvious that it's written by Joe Esterhaus, who's like the human equivalent of a taco fart.
Yeah. Agreed. Like, and he's obviously like terrified by women.
Yeah.
And so if because I think he wrote Basic Instinct too.
I think so, yeah.
And it's a really like clear, like, if Verhoeven had not directed those movies, they would have been very different, and they would not have been something that I would say this is actually like equality is like happening here.
It's like he's
because
basically
his
directing
like
someone else's work, essentially.
Large.
Yeah.
And because the choices that he makes are, based on his own like feelings and experiences.
And that's weird because a lot of times these movies, I'm picturing what I think and predict most of the masses, how they will react. So having them, even in like Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, I wouldn't necessarily call that pro-feminist because she was using sex and being sexy. Mm-hmm. Like, just so I know that that's what the masses will see and not look sort of any further, like most of them,
Right.
And so I've seen a movie with Helen Hunt called The Sessions, and Toni Collette, and I cannot remember the name of that movie. No, I'm going to discuss it later on in a later show because they've just impressed me so much. But they did like full nudity, and this is later on in their career, like they're big names now, and so they don't necessarily have to. Yeah. It's not none of that like I got to make my big break sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was still like intimidating, but powerful. Mm-hmm. So you could be looking at it, was like, hey, naked women, but this is the way they were done. I felt, okay, no, that's pro-feminism, because for you to see that as just like stripper view voyeurism, I guess, sort of thing, you would have to be like hit in the head with a brick,
right?
To get that. So once that's out of the way, now you can appreciate the other things.
Yeah. And so this is where I think like that Verhoeven consistently overestimates the audience. Like consistently, because because most of the way that nobody understood Starship Troopers like at all, like people were just like, and he's a Nazi. It's like, no, in fact he's actually not at all. But and
that's weird because the group that I saw it with, we all got it,
right? So
I didn't realize that it wasn't. I just thought they were like, oh, people just thought it was too violent and campy.
Yeah, right.
And that's why I didn't like make it huge or whatever, but.
Yeah, and there were people apparently in the test audience that why am I totally blanking on her name? The woman who plays the pilot. What's her character? Do you know?
Denise Richards.
Denise Richards,
right?
Diz.
On the screen, right
on
here.
the screen, right now.
People hated her.
No,
I mean,
Flores.
she
Flores.
is a ham and a half. I mean, like everybody in this, it's just like, like their performances are very like
over the top.
Very much.
Yeah.
Every character in the movie is a stereotype.
Yes,
basically, you've got the dumb jock, you've got the Jake Busey, and you've got the country boy, you've got the farm boy, and then you've got the kind of tough tomboy
and
chick.
You have like every.
They're all cliches.
But people hated her character.
Yeah.
Like, the comment cards were apparently like they wanted that girl dead. They were like, when Diz dies in this, like people were like pissed because they liked her.
wanted Rico to be with her.
Right, and not only that, but
I
part
was
of it was
well, I did too,
because like so Johnny Rico has 2 girls that are interested in him,
Right.
and 2 girls that he's interested in.
Right.
And you know, he's like very much infatuated with one more so than the other,
Mhm.
but he still like has sex with Dizzy, and the fact that Denise Richards' character was like despised because she like flirts with this other dude.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
but I think part of that, like, and I don't think she deserved all the hate, but the guy, the
Is
other dude,
such a douche.
he's
Yeah,
such
he's
a
such a douche.
douchebag
Yeah.
that, like, I think it was like, we don't necessarily hate you as a character. We hate the fact that you kind of like this dude, because
Over
how
our
do you
hero.
not see
Right.
what a freaking tool
Sure
bag
he
this guy is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so a little segue. Oh, we got a couple minutes here. A little segue into Starship Troopers, as they were saying. Very misunderstood movie, but I think it is fantastic. It has a lot to say about politics, about the thing with Verhoeven, like the through line with all of his movies is kind of like I think gender equality or feminism
Yeah,
or whatever. Because Starship Troopers, I think, is the perfect example of like the gender equality that we as a society keep saying that we're trying to achieve. And it's evidenced in the shower scene in Starship Troopers. There's a scene where all the men, because men and women, they all have equal ranks in the military. There's no distinction. There's no like segregation. It's like
All
men and women are
serve
equal.
together.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where they all shower together, and they're all naked, and there's nothing sexualized about it at all. The men aren't checking out the women. The women, like, there's a scene where like one of the guys is leaving, and like a girl kind of slaps him on the ass when he's walking out. But it's more just like
It's
the
like
way
a
you
buddy
hit,
thing.
like the way a baseball player would
Yeah.
hit his, yeah. But it's like they like in this society they have truly achieved gender equality, and I feel like this movie gets written off as just being a dumb sci-fi movie, but it's a lot of fun. And considering it's 20 years old, the CG for the
The
bug
special
aliens
effects
like
are
really holds up.
Really good.
Like the CG in Starship Troopers is way better than anything that George Lucas put into the prequels, the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah.
It looks real.
And not just the CG, but like
yeah.
even some of the
Well, but
the in
ILM
pictures,
did
like,
it
Yeah.
too, which is amazing.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
so
yeah.
yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris is great in it. Michael Ironside, who we freaking
Love.
adore.
Yeah.
He's great in it.
Clancy Brown,
Clancy Brown.
both of whom were villains on Justice League.
And wasn't
that I always
didn't
talk
Neil
about.
Patrick Harris do voice in one of the Justice League?
Yeah, I think he
cartoons?
did.
Yeah,
yeah, they had.
So-
I'm telling you, they had.
yeah, it's a
everybody.
good
Justice-
yeah.
Yeah.
So Starship Troopers, RoboCop, L, Showgirls, Black Book, any number of his early Dutch films.
Do the Right Thing. Indiana
Sure.
Jones.
Turkish Delight, Spetters. This dude, if you aren't familiar with the work of Paul Verhoeven, check him out because he doesn't have his signature style, like, which is what I love. His style is that he doesn't really, like, you can put in a Tim Burton movie, 30 seconds into it, you know it's a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Same with Spielberg,
Yeah.
same with Mel Brooks, Spike Lee. They all have like a signature look or a style or
Right.
music. But Paul Verhoeven is like, Starship Troopers is completely different from L. Showgirls is completely different from RoboCop. You know, he's a legitimately interesting guy, and he makes interesting films. I don't know if
You've never
he might be
watched a
boring as
movie
shit in real life.
with his commentary, it's fucking awesome.
I'm sure it is.
My favorite of all time is Total Recall, because it's him and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think it's like the 20th anniversary edition or something. And
Yeah.
it is absolutely the greatest film commentary of all time, next to the commentary that they did for Spinal Tap.
Oh, right.
And-
Where they stay in character.
Yeah, where they
Spinal
stay in
Tap.
character. Like, that is pretty amazing.
That's the best
But
commentary ever.
Paul Verhoeven and Arnold Schwarzenegger, I can't even do it
Yeah,
justice.
no, Paul
Just
Verhoeven and
trust
Arnold
that it
Schwarzenegger.
is something that you should invest time in watching.
so
them.
do that.
And I
Please.
will. Like
Yeah.
that's she is just giving me a recommendation that I'm absolutely gonna follow up on because I didn't even think about listening to
You'll
that.
get this later, but exactly.
I kind of get it now.
We're gonna wrap this up. I want to say a special thanks to Cinnamon for being here. It's a great guest, and I think we did a great show. I think we all learned a lot about Paul Verhoeven.
She did a great show.
She did a great show. We
Yeah.
did.
We sat here like bumps on a log.
Yeah.
You too.
But
I'm a bump.
as you've seen on a previous episode, we're doing a thing now where we honor actors or actresses who don't necessarily get the accolades or respect that they deserve. And in this episode, we're going to give it up to Brian James. If we could put a picture of Brian James up. I'm sure you recognize that face. Movie credits include Blade Runner, 48 Hours, Another 48 Hours, Crime Wave, Enemy Mine, Baxter, Shut Up!
He was also in Baxter
He was
Shut Up.
great in Baxter, Shut Up!
So good. Like,
Cherry
Transformers.
2000, The Player, Tango and Cash, TV credits, The Jeffersons, Chips, Quincy, Dukes of Hazzard, The A-Team, Sledgehammer, and Matlock.
That's
He's
some of them.
it's some of
That's some of that.
Look him up on IMDb. It's truly impressive. But just one of those actors, maybe never got the accolades or the credits he deserved. Certainly never won any Oscars or anything. But
He was in
he
everything.
was always great.
always in
He
demand.
made every movie he was in, like Richard Jenkins. He made every movie that he was in that much better just from being there. So the tradition with these guys is we do a shot of whiskey in their honor. So to Brian James, you
Hurry up, I'm thirsty.
were awesome. Brian James,
Brian
gone
James.
but will never be forgotten. So this was Matinee Prices, and this is Cinnamon.
This is Cinnamon.
That's Huru. This is Baxter, who would not shut up throughout the entire episode.
He shut up for a
the
little.
Baxter Show.
It's the
Oh, it is
Baxter
the Baxter
Show.
Show. There he is.
Yay!
Yeah, getting on camera one last time, making it all about
Your
him
show.
as he is wont to do.
Your show.
So,
You're the runaway hit of this show.
So we're gonna say goodnight and keep watching movies.
Yeah, I see you.
It's the Baxter Show.
It's the Baxter Show.